That is true. I can't with these people around here.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are you?
I are fine. How are you?
I'm doing
Good afternoon.
well. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon. Are fine.
Well, hello. Hello.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Is everybody on? Do we have enough for a quorum, Mr. Price?
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Yes, sir. You have enough for a quorum.
Okay, is staff ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Everybody on? Okay, great. Quorum is great. We'll do this.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Yes, sir. You have enough for a quorum.
Okay, is staff ready to go? Yes, I've been told. Great. Quorum is great. We'll do this.
Mr. Chair,
Am I getting some feedback from everybody?
You were getting feedback, sir. I think that's been corrected.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, well, let me call the May 3rd Planning Commission meeting to order. Please allow me to read into the record. In accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, a copy of the agenda was posted on the radio, TV, newspapers, and persons requesting notification and posted on the County Administration Bulletin Board and sent to persons requesting information. So we certainly appreciate the public joining us here again and our commissioners on this May 3rd Planning Commission meeting. First item on our agenda is our consent agenda. Before we take a vote on that, Mr. Price, I received a copy of the
Yes, sir. I'll apologize for that. And I think on your agenda it states it's December 2020, and that so you were sent the wrong minutes. Y'all have already gone through those, so I apologize. And we'll have all of the minutes for your approval at the next meeting, which would be the June 7th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Price.
Mr. Chair, however, with the December minutes, I do see an error. I hope it was corrected. I'm listed as absent, but if you read the minutes, I was not only present, but most vocal at that meeting. And I'd like the record to reflect that I was indeed present for the December 20th meeting. This is Frierson.
Staff, can we make that correction?
Yes, we will get that to the transcriber.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Frierson, for bringing it to our attention. Okay, so Chair, entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Prior to that, do we have comments from any of the public on any of these matters?
We do not have comments from the public on any of these matters. We have comments from the applicants for cases 1, 2, and 4.
So as, pardon, I will ask of the other commission members that with respect to the map amendments, staying on the consent agenda, that cases 2, and 3 with staff recommendation of approval would stay on, whereas cases 1 and 4, I think I could count today, would be removed for discussion. So does any of the planning members want to discuss cases 2 or 3? Okay, not hearing much, I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with the following amendments: is that item A, the minutes be removed, and that case number 1 and case number 4 also be removed from the consent agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we receive the consent agenda as proposed. All in favor signify by roll call vote. Mr. Price.
All right. Gilchrist,
Aye.
Carnes,
Yes.
Yankee,
Aye.
Carlisle,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Brady,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Branham,
Aye.
Frierson.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, great.
approval.
Thank you, Mr. Price. That brings us to our first case, first map amendment.
Okay, your first case is case 21-011 MA. The applicants are Michael and Susan, I think hopefully I'm saying this correct, Hook. The location of the request is 109 Crane Branch Lane. It's about a 20.7 acre tract. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property from RSHD, which is residential, single family high density, to rural. Staff's recommendation for this request is disapproval. And that's mainly because the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan's recommendation of neighborhood medium density future land use. The plan recommends medium density residential neighborhoods and supporting neighborhood commercial scale development design in a traditional neighborhood format. Again, it also recommends a desired development pattern of medium density residential neighborhoods designed to provide a mix of residential uses and densities within neighborhoods. Additionally, approval of the rezoning request would be out of character with the surrounding development pattern and zoning districts of the area. So again, for these reasons, staff recommends denial of this request.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Are there any questions for the staff? Mr. Price, you mentioned that we have comments from the applicant. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, we can proceed with those comments at this time.
Okay.
All right, commissioners, we have a comment from the applicant. To whom it may concern, I am wanting to rezone 109 Crane Branch Lane from RSHD to RU to maintain green space while I'm living and have an area where my wife and relatives can have a place to relax. Eventually, I'm planning to build one house for myself and wife. I will be selling some timber to thin out the area for the bigger, healthy trees to thrive and provide shade. I have no desire to put any farm animals, only my dog, on the property. Most of my neighbors have expressed concern about chickens, cows, etc. on the property. I have been approached about selling the land for high density homes to be built and don't want that to happen. If I could afford more land, I would preserve it for green space. Respectfully, Michael Hook.
Okay, commissioners, are there any questions for the staff based upon the applicant's comments? Do we have any other person sign up to speak on this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Discussion.
I mean, I find this one, this is Heather Cairns. I find this one baffling as to why it would need to be rezoned down to allow him to do his intended uses. So I basically see no reason to rezone this out of its current zoning.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes, sir, Mr. Brandon.
it does seem like the property owner is
very much within their rights to do with it as they please, as stated in the application, if their desires to maintain it as open space. I don't see any prohibition to doing that as it is currently zoned. And I think while we would very much appreciate and respect his intentions with that property, us as a planning commission, just having the question of what is the appropriate zoning with a large part of our decision-making, including, the comprehensive plan of the county and the surrounding properties and their zoning designations. It just doesn't seem like it's appropriate for a rezoning to that classification. At least that's my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioners Carnes and Branham. Any additional comments on this case? No, I certainly would agree with that, those assessments, and welcome a motion from the commission regarding case number 21-011MA.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to send this on to County Council, case number 21-011MA for disapproval, as stated by staff.
I
Thank you,
second that
Commissioner Dennis.
motion. I second that motion. This is Frierson.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dennis, for the motion, and Commissioner Frierson for the second. Any discussion? If not, Chair will entertain a roll call vote. Mr. Price?
Okay. Gilchrist,
Aye.
Carnes,
Yes.
Yonke,
Aye.
Carlisle,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Brady,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Branham,
Aye.
Frierson.
Aye.
All right, so the motion for disapproval unanimously passes.
Okay, and for those that are watching, we are a recommending body to County Council. They will meet on May the 25th. And Mr. Price, I'm assuming they will still be meeting by Zoom. Is that right?
Yes, sir. At this time, they will be meeting by Zoom.
Okay, and so the applicant certainly can feel free to join the council at that time as they take this case up. Thank you very much. Moving right along to the next case.
Okay. The next item is case 21-014MA. The applicant David Goodson is requesting to rezone property located at 613 Sterling Goodson Road from rural to general commercial. The parcel is a little more than 5 acres. Actually, they have it listed as 5.35 acres. Staff recommends disapproval of this request. According to the comprehensive plan, non-residential development may be considered for location along main road corridors and within a contextually appropriate distance from the intersection of a primary arterial. This particular request does not meet those guidelines. In addition, the request is not consistent with the character of the existing residential development pattern and zoning districts at this intersection of Lower Richland Boulevard. So again, for those reasons, staff recommends disapproval.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Price. Are there any questions for the staff? Mr. Price, do we have persons sign up to regarding this case?
We have comments from the applicant.
Okay, we can proceed with those at this time.
All right, so we've got a comment from Mr. Goodson. It says, to whom it may concern, the reason for changing the zoning on my property to general commercial is because I am an electrical contractor who has reopened my business here at 1840 Lower Richland Boulevard, Hopkins, South Carolina, 29061. My company is also licensed to sell electrical material and light fixtures. My goal is to have a shop/warehouse/office building with a yard for heavy equipment to be stored and worked on. There will be restrooms and parking for the public. The property will also include a private park called the Goodson Estate. Here, visitors will be able to rent land to camp or rent a shelters that has tables, outdoor grills to have cookout and events, later adding a swimming pool. We will also be opening a trade school teaching HVAC, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, masonry, landscaping, and commercial cleaning. And I will be seeking assistance in this matter from Richland County. Thanks for being best. And that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there are no other persons signed up to comment on this particular case? Any additional comments from the commission regarding the applicant's statement? If not, we will discuss the case and chair will entertain a motion. Any comments? If not, are there any motions on this particular case?
Yeah,
Mr. Branham?
thank you, Mr. Chair. I feel like there are some zones maybe on Lower Richland Boulevard where maybe a use along these lines might be appropriate, but I just am not seeing it in this particular part of the boulevard. You know, it's not right up on the high school, and it's not on one of the other ends that is near to a major intersection. So I'm just seeing, I'm having a hard time finding a reason to justify the rezoning as is. It certainly doesn't seem to fit with the surrounding area. It may decades down the line, just because Lower Richland Boulevard is something of an important thoroughfare in that region, but I just don't see it right now.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Those comments, any additional comments on this case? Mr. Brown, would you like to offer, Ms. Carnes, were you going to say something on this one? Oh, okay. Well, Mr. Brandon, would you like to offer that up as a motion?
Yes, sir. So I'll move to send this case to council with the recommendation of disapproval for the reasons set forth by staff in the report. This is case 21014 MA.
Yes, sir. Is there a second on this case?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded by Mr. Dennis that we send case number 21014 MA forward to council with recommendation of disapproval. All in favor signify by roll call vote. Mr. Price.
Okay, Gilchrist,
Aye.
Carnes,
Yes.
Yonke,
Aye.
Carlisle,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Grady,
Aye.
Taylor. Taylor. Okay, Branham,
Aye.
Frierson.
Aye.
We didn't get Mr. Taylor.
No, we didn't. But it passes. The motion for disapproval passes.
Okay. And again, we are a recommending body to county council, and they will meet on the 25th to take this case up at that time. And the applicant is welcome to come to that meeting. That wraps it up for the map amendments today. We move on now to item number 4, other items for action.
Okay. I know we've been placing opportunity zones kind of as a placeholder. I didn't know if this was something that the Planning Commission wanted to discuss today, or would we just look to take this up at another time?
We certainly can think about taking this up at another time. I know that several commissioners had mentioned the possibility of getting together as a smaller work group And maybe, I don't know if anything was circulated to try and get all us together, but let's try to do that and see if we can't meet between now, for those that are all the commissioners that are interested, between now and the next commission meeting to have a larger discussion about it.
Okay. All right.
I think that's what we said it in our last meeting. So.
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you
Yes.
saw the message. Mr. Taylor just sent a message that he was having technical difficulties. That's why we
Okay.
couldn't get his vote.
Yes, okay. Just saw that. Yes. Thank you so much,
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Fries. And Mr. Taylor, if you're listening, we will certainly note that for sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So if commissioners are fine with that, we can do that, circulate something for a smaller work group, and in our next meeting, have an agenda item to discuss opportunity zones.
Okay. Yes. So if that is your decision, that's fine. Again, we're going to start getting into the code rewrite, which we will be discussing later on during this agenda. Just so we don't want any, conflicts, because we're definitely going to need your time and energy as we get into the code. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say rewrite, new code, new land development code. So, that's something you may want to take into consideration as you get together in your groups.
Absolutely. I think opportunity zones will certainly, that conversation along with the new land development code will be most appropriate, I think. So.
Okay. All right. So we'll be moving on to item B under other items for action.
Yes.
Mr. Crooks will kind of take over from here.
Okay.
Sure, Commissioners. So we have a presentation to go through, kind of just a big overview of the plan itself. Mr. DeLage, if you could pull that up for me. We're going to go through kind of a big overview, looking at the planning effort, some of the public engagement we've had, as well as looking at things like the interventions that are identified within the plan itself. So just bear with us a moment while we get that pulled up.
Okay. Take your time.
Chairman,
Yes, sir. Dennis.
do they have a link for us that we can also pull it up?
Was it attached to the, I was looking at my email now. I think it was attached to our email. Is that right?
The plan document there is a link to the agenda, or there is a link on the agenda.
On the agenda. Yes, it's on the agenda.
Yeah, I keep getting an error when I click on it.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Is it possible we could send out a quick link to all of the commissioners?
Yes, I can. I was going to try and add one to the chat box, but I'm not sure if it's going to let me. But let me try this. If anything, I'm just because the file is so large, it's not going to let me send it as a direct file. So I'm putting the project website in the chat bar. So that's renewpontiac.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you make it to that page, if you look at documents, it'll take you down to the bottom where the page link, or where the plan links are themselves.
I was also able to click the link in the packet that was sent via email as well.
Okay.
And it's coming up slowly, but it's coming up.
And it is a relatively large file, even without the appendices. So it may take it a minute or two to load. But hopefully, commissioners all had time to review and take a look at this. We did have a public meeting week before last on this. And so if commissioners feel ready, I will go ahead and get started.
Yes, sir.
All right, Tommy, if you'll advance for me. All right, so just kind of here looking at an overview of really what all is included within the plan document itself, and what we're going to be talking about today. So really just kind of giving a high level overview of this document, and what this plan is looking at is establishing a new master plan for what we're calling the Sandhills community. And so this is going to primarily center on the historic intersection that is known as Pontiac, so Two Notch and Spears Creek Church Road, as well as the Richland Northeast Industrial Park, which includes Clemson Road, and then the Royal Pines Estates subdivision. And so what this plan is looking at is focusing on this geographic area. And we've been in this process for about 2 years now. Started in the fall of 2019, so a little more than a year and a half, slightly less than 2, and had multiple opportunities for engagement. But ultimately, the big outcomes of this is developing interventions for how we can address issues and opportunities for the area. And we'll be diving into those a little bit more in detail here in a second. Tommy, if you could advance for me, please. So this is looking at the boundary area specifically. So you can see kind of geographically where we're laid out. So right in the middle of our planning area is Clemson Road, which really kind of bisects it into a northern and southern portion. So that southern portion is really primarily going to be our main residential area, which is going to be the Royal Pines Estate subdivision. And then on that northern half, we have the Spears Creek mobile home community, as well as the surrounding residences that are located within that area. And then up to the kind of top portion of our boundary area is the historic Pontiac area. And so these is where you'd be finding the Pontiac Magistrate's Office, the shops at Pontiac, things along those. But mainly it's one of the commercial hubs for this area. And so I know this is probably one of the questions that the commissioners may have, and has been a common topic and a common question that we've gotten. But so this boundary area is derived using Administrative Policy 2016-5, which establishes the future master planning criteria for how we look at neighborhood master plans. So really what this does is it establishes 3 main criteria to look at for any new neighborhood master plan, which deals with scale, substructure, and cost benefit. And what those different areas mean is that the scale is going to be looking at what is the size of the planning area that we have. So looking at the overall area that we're looking to plan for, to make sure that we're not spreading resources too thin, and that we're able to be impactful with what we're trying to achieve. And so really the criteria that we're looking at here is something that's either about a quarter of a mile in area, or has 3 identifiable conjoining neighborhood areas. Primarily looking at residential areas versus something that's singularly commercial. And then substructure is really looking at what is the social capital that we have. So primarily dealing with, are there active organizations or willing organizations that would be wanting to contribute and help implement this plan. And then cost benefit is generally what it sounds like. It is specifically looking at cost benefit to kind of some high level preliminary interventions that as part of this analysis are identified, looking at issues and opportunities as kind of staff sees them. And so this was kind of the initial process prior to even starting the master planning process itself, was performing this analysis. And so that analysis is where this boundary area came from. And so just kind of wanted to mention that here early on, because I know it's probably a question that's going to come up, is why was the village not included? And so it's because of that criteria. So the scale and substructure and cost benefit analysis is part of that why. So that is the main reason why the village was not included, not considered, because it wouldn't fit the criteria that we have per that policy. So Tommy, if you'd go forward for me. And so what does the planning effort really look at? So establishing goals for the planning area. So we've hired a consultant, so both infrastructure and environment. So using that outside consultant to develop this plan, conduct this process. So looking at the analysis of the area, identifying issues and opportunities, and then ultimately developing interventions and recommendations, and then moving forward. So obviously this has not been done just by staff or talking amongst ourselves with a consultant, but looking at the community and working with the community to really develop what are these things that we want to see accomplished. What does the community want to see accomplished? And that's really where these interventions have been derived from, is based on that public input and that public engagement process. So Tommy, if you move forward for me. And so for those of you who attended the meeting a couple weeks ago, you heard Jeff note that this has been a plan with significant amount of public engagement, some of which he's the most that he's kind of seen and done with a lot of planning processes that he's been involved with. And so, you know, we have had a wealth of engagement with this, whether that was through the website and social media, whether it was through our neighborhood meetings or stakeholder meetings, or our public meetings and charrettes, as well as our surveys. We have tried to be as active as possible in engaging the community as it relates to this effort. So we have done things like go door knocking, door to door, placing flyers, mailboxes on people's trash cans, putting them on their doors so that way they know about what is happening. So we've had several different engagement points throughout this process, and it has very much been a stakeholder-led, community-led process in terms of what people are wanting to see and how they're wanting to shape their community. So Tommy, if you would kind of just go one more. So this is just kind of just a quick look at some of the different public engagement elements that we've had with this. So some of the flyers and postcards, as well as some of the pictures from the charrettes and surveys, and then just some of those different input outcomes that we've received throughout this process. So Tommy, if you want to advance for me. So going into really the bulk of what this plan looks at in terms of these interventions. And so here on the screen, you see the established vision map. And so one of the things that this plan does, and one of the most, I think, important things, is it establishes a vision for the Sandhills community. And so what that vision is a Sandhills area neighborhood envisions a rediscovered Northeast Richland County community portraying safe and walkable streets, thriving businesses, quality services, and increased recreational opportunities. The Sandhills area shall be established with a sense of place that encourages community interaction and enhances the overall living and working environment. And so to me, this is one of the most important things, because we're saying this is where we want to go. This is what we want to be. So creating this vision for how we're wanting to grow, how we're wanting to develop, what we're wanting to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And so this vision map really kind of sets out a lot of the highlights and some of those bigger components that to getting towards achieving this vision. And so the interventions and the plan itself is broken up into kind of goals or focus areas, similar to the way that the comprehensive plan is and has the various planning elements that it looks at. So the master plan for Sandhills has a kind of similar setup, but is broken up into things like transportation, recreation, beautification, business, land use and zoning, and services and safety. And so each one of those different components has its own larger goal as it relates towards meeting this vision. So we'll kind of go over some of these different interventions on a very high level and talk about the goals for each of those kind of focus areas. So Tommy, if you go forward. So transportation was one of the main focus areas, and the plan has a goal to enhance and upgrade area road networks and systems to allow for efficient travel through a variety of modes and allow for greater connections for area residents internally and externally. And so this looks at a variety of components and interventions that are recommended within this plan. So things particular such as reconstructing Spear Street Church Road. And so this would be in part with the penny. So as they're going through their process, as they're going through looking at things, asking them to, hey, maybe we can take a look at some of these different components based on the feedback and input that we received from this. Similarly, looking at traffic enhancements. So this would include advocating to SCDOT that they look at some different issues and opportunities as it relates to various traffic lights and intersections within the area. So things like increasing turn lanes, evaluating timing, looking at including left turn arrows, things of that nature. And then also looking at specific intersection improvements and identifying what those needs could be. Similarly, looking at rail and bus service. So particularly as it relates to the railroad, more so as it relates to kind of beautification measures, but trying to work with the railroad and making sure that really kind of being good neighbors in terms of cleaning it up and improving crossings as possible for better pedestrian and vehicle access. Similarly with the Comet, in terms of bus service, trying to coordinate with them, new opportunities for what some different stops could be and how those routes might be set up. And based on some input and things like that we've had through the process, identifying potential opportunities related to the Comet. So Tommy, if you'd advance for me. And so our next focus area is going to be recreation and conservation. And this has been one that we heard a lot of from residents and community members related to our planning area and really the Northeast Richland County in general. But so as part of this process, establishes a goal to strengthen and increase area recreational opportunities to provide quality green spaces within the community while protecting and enhancing the natural and man-made assets for everyone's enjoyment. And so one of the big ideas in terms of recommendations for this is creating a larger walkability loop. So really what that would entail would be trying to connect the various residential neighborhoods and businesses all together in some form or fashion, whether that's greenways, shared use paths, or as development takes place, connecting those through sidewalks. So that's kind of one of those things that's identified as pathway installment. So as new development is occurring along frontages, that they provide that those sidewalks to help increase the walkability. Another thing that is mentioned is looking at how we can partner with the Clemson research facility in terms of what they are doing in terms of public access and things that are going on there, because that is one concern that they have had as we've been in talks with them is, it is a research facility and research comes first. And that's been one of those things that in terms of how people are using the site, they're very limited, and that's why public access in the past has not been as it has been restricted. And so really trying to work with them to see where opportunities could occur within their current programming and allowances. And so that's kind of one thing that came out of that public input is folks really willing to try to utilize that space as possible. But obviously needs to work in tandem with what that research facility has. And then another one of those big ideas, really just exploring recreational opportunities in general. So looking at things like dog parks, community centers, or larger outdoor recreational green spaces, as well as interior parks and greenway parks. And so looking at a variety of different locations within the focus area of where those might could occur, and how we could set up and develop those. Because this is one of those things that was identified as a critical need, was additional recreational opportunities, whether that's on the smaller scale or even at a larger scale for more of a regional basis versus just a local neighborhood area. So Tommy, if you'll advance for me. And so this is just kind of another look at that vision map, but looking at the recreational opportunities and conservation opportunities in particular. So you can kind of see some of the things identified on here is where some of those pocket park locations could exist, as well as where some of those larger recreational opportunities could occur. So as you can see, some that are kind of outside the boundary area, particularly along Bookman Road, where the older recreational facility exists. And so how maybe potentially reutilizing that space to the larger recreational benefit. So Tommy, if you'd advance for me. And so the next focus area would be beautification. And so again, goal for it is to provide for a sense of place and community that all living within and traveling through the area will be proud to call home and envy as their own. And so here, really looking at different quality of life improvements as it relates to aesthetics, but also the general feel and the way that people really kind of consider their neighborhood and their community overall. So one of the things that kind of stick out is there's the larger propane tank along Two Notch Road. So how could we beautify that in some form or fashion? So whether that's screening, whether that's public art, something along those lines. So addressing that in some way. Looking at Adopt a Road cleanup program with businesses or residents picking up litter along the roadways in a quarterly, semi-yearly or yearly fashion, and then recognizing that in some capacity. Also looking at things like streetscaping as new development occurs or new improvements are made, and then also just looking at regular maintenance and awareness through county partnerships. So, whether that's through flyers, through mailings, but just letting people know that, hey, here's what some of these issues are that you might not be aware of. Here's how some of these things can be addressed as, you as the property owner could do without saying, hey, you're in violation and we're about to cite you kind of thing. Here's a little bit more proactive way of just letting you know that you as a property owner, just kind of as on a regular basis, here's some things that you might want to take a look at. Tommy, if you go to the next slide for me. Excuse me. So our next really focus area is going to be business. And it's, excuse me, it's kind of broken up into some different subsections in terms of where it is focusing, more particularly to the various kind of context areas within the planning area itself. So looking at Pontiac, looking at Clemson Road, and then looking at Two Notch as well. But for this focus area, again, a goal to augment and diversify external, internal business opportunities that fulfill residents' needs through the availability of a variety of business service options. And so really what that means is looking to really complement what is already existing and what is already present. So thinking particular to the village, how can we complement what is happening there with development and business opportunities that surround it? But in the same way, how can we ensure that residents' needs are fulfilled on a relatively regular basis? So looking more so at kind of neighborhood services, neighborhood scale commercial, things of that nature. And some of the various recommendations, just general recommendations, looks at things like promoting development opportunities, as well as looking at various incentives or mechanisms for incentives. So whether that is, tax advantage, tax increment financing, or business improvement districts, things along those lines to try to help attract investment, but as well as look at incentivizing some of it. And then again, looking at site maintenance and then approval enforcements, where once something is permitted, and develop that they stay within those operating development standards as well. Tommy, if you could move forward for us. So as I mentioned previously, we kind of identify various sectors for business within the planning area. So we have the 2-notch business corridor, we have the Clemson Road industrial area, and we have the Pontiac downtown corridor. And so within each of those larger geographic areas, we kind of identify specific interventions related to those business-wise. But some common themes that exist throughout those is really this larger thematic and branding elements for the planning area itself. And so within that would be creating kind of sub elements related to each of the various commercial areas. And so with that, you'd be looking at things like banners, wayfinding, signage, sidewalks, lighting, various components that would go along with it, but also looking at potential design guides. So as redevelopment and new development is occurring, it has that consistent feel, it has that consistent flavor. So okay, yeah, I'm in Pontiac, I'm in the Sandhills area. I know where I'm at based on the look and feel of it. So those are some of those different things that kind of correlate between these different business areas, but looking at some different things within themselves in particular. The Pontiac area has a little bit larger space in terms of recommendations. So really here looking at things like public parking. So how could we utilize parking to benefit the area in general, as well as looking at development partnerships. So in terms of redevelopment and financial incentives, things of that nature. So whether that's demolition of underutilized properties, creation of new development concepts, grants, things of that nature on how we could look at redevelopment and reinvestment within that commercial area on a little bit smaller scale. And then also within that Pontiac area, we probably have the most development potential in terms of 2 larger parcel areas. So Tommy, if you want to advance for me here real quick. This is just kind of looks at conceptually, what that area might include. And so here on the screen, you can kind of see 2 different graphics, or really 3 different graphics, where on the bottom right-hand corner, you're kind of looking at a concept land use plan of how that area might be laid out. And then on the upper left hand, in conjunction with the properties on the top of the street, how might some of that future development look and feel? So how those sites are set up, how they're oriented, and then how that space might be laid out. And so really here, seeing some of the most potential for new development in and of itself, versus redevelopment. Tommy, could you go forward for me? And so next focus area is going to be housing. So a goal here to ensure appropriate housing options that contribute to quality of place for all demographics and socioeconomic status. And so here, again, looking at various interventions primary to housing and residential development. So things, again, like identity and branding and thematic elements for Royal Pines Estates, but also looking at affordable housing as it relates to infill development. So where there are vacant parcels in Royal Pines Estates, how could we create infill within those areas? And then also looking at things like expanding the Bailey Bill through the local ordinance. So right now, the Bailey Bill, as we have adopted for the county, it only applies to the historic properties provisions. But through state code, it does allow for affordable housing within it. So, how could we potentially apply that on a local level within the county? And so that's kind of what that entails, looking at, exploring that potential option. And then again, looking at affordable housing more broadly as it relates to multifamily uses in new development as it could be created. And then again, looking at residential enhancement, so exploring funding opportunities that enhance the quality of those residential properties. So, as we have older property owners that may not necessarily be able to maintain their properties or are having issues, or they're low-income residents, things of that nature, how can we provide this assistance for our overall community housing-wise? Tommy, if you could move forward for me. And so our next category is going to be land use and zoning. And so again, establishes a goal here for creating dynamic and varied regulations and future land uses that contribute to the quality of place and growth needs for the area. And so really, this is just going to be looking at a limited number of things, but particularly to this, looking at the zoning districts and potential future land use updates with it. And so for the zoning districts, really looking at the future code and the neighborhood character overlay and how might that be established for this master plan area related to those design guidelines and things of that nature. And then the future land use map updates would be looking at the neighborhood activity centers, mixed use corridors, things of that nature, where those might need to be extended and where they might need to be created or added. So really just taking a look back at the future land use map as it relates to the Pontiac and the Sandhills area overall. And then Tommy, you could go forward for me. So that kind of final focus area deals with services and safety. And so for this goal is to ensure the presence of the appropriate and necessary services for a safe, engaged, and informed community, respective of all that interact within the area. And so really this is just saying for the Sandhills area that we have the different types of services that we need for all the residents. And so a common concern that came up was safety and security related to Sandhills area, but also the area in, the village, but also the area in general. So looking at 911 call boxes, camera systems, but also looking at just kind of personal safety, things like street lighting, as well as some things like for bus stops for the school district. How could we potentially at those locations create a more improved space so that way kids, when they're waiting on buses or when they get off the buses, they have a more designated place to wait on those. And so those are some of those things that came directly from those planning charrettes and that engagement process. And then one of the other things as well was how could we potentially enhance the Spanish speaking services at the library? Because that is one of the things with this planning area, we do have a larger Spanish speaking population. And so ensuring that they have resources and programs and things of that nature within the broader area that they could benefit from. And so really, Tommy, if you go forward, that's the plan in a nutshell. So one of the things that the plan also includes is a data profile, which is basically looking at the demographics and other elements that exist within the area. But for the most part, we've primarily focused on the interventions and what those recommendations could look like. So I guess at this time, I would ask for any questions that the commissioners may have. Or any comments that you all have.
So, Mr. Crooks, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Well, let me first thank the staff and the consulting team for the work they've done on this particular project. All of our master plans in the county are critical to existing growth and future growth, and so these opportunities are certainly very much needed and timely. Commissioners, are there any questions? I do have a couple of questions, but are there any questions from our commission?
I have a few. So we talked about these areas and things like that. And we said the Sandhills area was kind of, the village of Sandhills was kind of left out, but then in the end, we're talking about other things over there at the library. So I'm trying to see how we're saying the Sandhills, the village of Sandhills is left out, but we're trying to develop this area. To me, this is not the Sandhills area. This is more what should be called Pontiac area. Just simply because that's where Clemson Road and Two Notch meet, and everything to the right of that, when you live up here in the Northeast, that's pretty much Pontiac. That's where your Pontiac House of Pizza is. That's where the skating ring is. That's where First Palmetto Bank is. I mean, you know that when you live up here. And as I'm looking around at all this, there's only certain parcels that hasn't been used yet. One of the biggest ones is actually owned by the Pioneer Land Company, and then right next to that would be the Enigma Company. So, I mean, that right there is 60 acres, and I see things like that. But the only thing the county really owns is more towards the city of Columbia portion, right off back of Spears Creek, in between Spears Creek and Clemson Road. And we only own 19.5 acres. And I think that would be the only thing we could really utilize as a county, because everything else is already owned by corporations going down Clemson Road, and there's not much left to develop down through there. So what are we really trying to accomplish with this? I understand that we're looking forward to the future, but a lot of those things on Clemson Road are freshly built. A lot of doctors' offices, a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, there was a new fireworks place put in there, beverage company, CPI. A lot of those things are very new. So what is our step forward to rezone a couple of these things to make this work when all these corporations already own them?
Gotcha. So Mr. Dennis, to your first part of your question, so as it relates to the name for this. So as kind of the website suggests, we were originally titling this area as Pontiac. That's what we had been calling it initially. That's what the process started as. But as we had been moving through the engagement portion, we were seeing a disconnect between the planning area as a whole and what people were referencing as Pontiac. There was a clear distinction and a clear attachment to Pontiac really only being that one intersection. They didn't see this broader area as being Pontiac. So looking at, Royal Pines Estates and even the residential area off of Spears Creek Church Road along Jabay, even they weren't necessarily identifying the area as Pontiac other than the intersection. So that was one of the things that we received feedback on, was what to call this area. And so that became a decent portion of what we were trying to determine with this is how do people identify this area, whether it is Pontiac, whether it's Spring Valley, whether it's Sparkleberry, whether it's what. And so the common term that kept coming up from people was, we see this as Sandhills. We don't see it as the village at Sandhill or the Clemson Research or Clemson Sandhill Research Facility. We see this area as Sandhills. And so that's really how that term came about, in terms of looking at this area as a whole, that this is the Sandhills community, not the Pontiac community. Pontiac is a sub area, if you will, of this Sandhills community. So that's really kind of how that came about. In terms of what we're looking to achieve with this, and so I guess kind of the why, I guess, is your question. And so, like I said, the main thing for us is looking at this vision and these goals, because as kind of the name of the plan looks at is rediscover. This is a primarily built area. As you mentioned, the Clemson Road corridor has seen a lot of new development. We do have established businesses there, but a lot of these areas is an area that's seen growth pressures. So you've got Wood Creek Farms, and you've got Green Hill Parish, and you've got these newer subdivisions on the north side of this that are growing, or continually seeing development happening. And then you've got the village and all that it entails on the western side. And then you've got established communities to the south side in terms of the woodlands and wildwood, things of that nature. And so with this area, it became this kind of left out space. You've got Pontiac that has these established businesses, but they've been there a while. They have not seen too much investment in the past few years. Same way with Royal Pines Estates. It's an established community that's really kind of this, it's more so a larger mobile home or manufactured home, excuse me, subdivision, just based on kind of how their zoning works currently. It's all MH. And then you've got a larger mobile home park in the middle of your other residential area, as well as more established residents. So kind of the impetus was, you're seeing all of this development happening everywhere else, but you're not really seeing too much here. So how do we look at reinvestment? How do we look at other development potentials that is complementary to the growth and development that is happening around us, to then include that within our focus area? So whether that is residential development, whether that is commercial development, really looking at reinvigorating, I guess is probably a good term, for our residences, for our commercial developments, and looking at those different opportunities. Because most of our issues and opportunities here are a lot of those growth pressures, but we do have issues and opportunities internal to this that are really unconnected. And so again, I think a lot of it is that growth pressure that had been happening around it, but really looking at ways to get this area going again that complements the growth and development that's happening around it, if that makes sense.
Mr.
does
Crooks, I'm sorry, Mr. Dennis, go right ahead.
Mr. Crooks, that does make sense. Reason why I asked that question is this area is also very, what I call a pick area, only because the city of Columbia has come on the backside and annexed a lot of that in. And I'm just wanting to know how in the future, if we spend money to redo this, how can we ensure that the city of Columbia does not take it from us by annexing in? I mean, if we're looking to do this, we got to look at it for the betterment of the community. And if the city of Columbia, if we get that tax dollars up there and we start losing revenue by the city of Columbia annexing things, then, I mean, we're actually taking money away from our taxpayers here in the county.
So that, I mean, so in terms of annexation, yes, that is a concern, but it's more so a limited concern, because it's really kind of the way that, at least that I look at it, is everybody's a Richland County citizen. Everybody pays Richland County taxes. And so those loss of revenue that could occur with annexation would be very limited in terms of what some of the impacts might be, especially for what a lot of those businesses are that you would likely see some of that annexation occur. So, I mean, most of the city, at least as it relates to our boundary area, is along or near Earth Road. And so in terms of how that could potentially cover the rest of our area, that's probably a long time coming, if at all. And so, you know, any potential revenue impacts, I really think they're limited within this area. And so the only things that you would really kind of be looking at is your general loss to a couple of levies, and then maybe just a small amount to maybe some ATAX and ATAX funding if those were already happening to begin with. And so it's a concern, but it's a very limited concern at this time. But, you know, City of Columbia residents are Richland County residents, and they pay Richland County taxes. So that is one of those things that relates to, you know, what investments we make and what efforts we look at here. I mean, in either case, we're benefiting Richland County citizens in either event.
Thank you.
Mr. Crooks, Stephen Gilchrist here. Just to piggyback on Commissioner Dennis's point, how far up does this plan, does it come close to the city property near Wood Creek Farms?
So do you mean property in the city?
Yes.
So it'd be I guess the eastern boundary of the plan area would be the municipal boundary with City of Columbia.
Okay.
So
I guess I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, so if we're looking at a map, that right-hand side of that map would be City of Columbia.
And you mentioned something about a quarter-mile area from a
Yes.
demographic and geographic perspective.
Right. So as it relates to that master plan evaluation criteria, so sorry, scale criteria. So it's really kind of a qualitative analysis. And so a 1 mile radius or 1 square mile area is kind of that really, kind of optimal area, but going out further. So if you're larger than that area, making sure that you have not a lot of neighborhood areas, if you will, that you would be trying to plan for. So that way everything is contiguous, consistent, and you're not having a unmanageable boundary area that you're trying to plan for. Also, so you're not having too many distinct neighborhood areas in and of themselves, but where they are contiguous, they might have very same, if not the same issues, only a limited or slight variation for what those issues or opportunities could be, if that makes sense.
Got it. Yeah. So is that the standard that we've used for all of these master plans?
No, sir, that is not. So this is the first time that criteria has been applied is for this plan. So those were established as a result of a council motion in, I believe 2015. It's 2015 or 2016 by then Councilwoman Dixon. And so her motion was to create this criteria and then apply it for a new master plan. And so based on her motion and the spirit of her motion, that was what Mr. Jackson, prior to his passing, carried forward in asking staff to apply this criteria and look at District 9, where a master plan could potentially benefit. And so
excuse me for interrupting. So the new ruling by council in 2015 really limited our ability to be more comprehensive in our study of a master plan. Is that right?
I would say no, because I think that's one of the fallacies of our current master plans is a lot of them are too broad, they're too unwieldy, they cover too much area and really don't look at things in a targeted enough way or a specific enough way for them to be as impactful as they could be. So for instance, we've got several plans that cover, multiple areas of the county, but how successful can we be in their implementation where they just really function as these larger small area plans or, a subset of the comp plan versus being something more specific and targeted. So this criteria really helps establish a mechanism for ways that as we're creating these new plans, we can be targeted, we can be specific, and we can be impactful in the way that we are leveraging resources through the county.
Okay, thank you for that. Because back to Mr. Dennis's earlier point about the village of Sandhills, a lot of questions about whether or not why that was not included in the Sandhills plan. And I think you may have helped me understand why now that it's been more of a restrictive kind of council passed a more restrictive measure to limit just geographically where we are. So do we have a master plan that includes Sandhills, the village of Sandhills and that corridor? I know you mentioned that there were 3 buckets: Two Notch Road Business, Clemson Road Industrial, and Pontiac Downtown Corridor. I was just curious to know, is all of that a part of this particular master plan, or is that kind of a subset of what?
So the village at Sandhill would not be included within this plan. No, sir. And I'm not aware of it being in any, at least county master plan. I mean, I'm sure they have their own particular development master plan as a private development that they have. But as it relates to the
Sure.
Sandhills master plan and any of our other adopted master plans, it is not included in any of those things. So we do, at least as it relates to the village, we are trying to be complementary in how some of these interventions and recommendations are created, because that has been a lot of comments and input from the public that we received is the village, the village, the village, the village. But okay, but so as we look at things, so like business opportunities, creating, various neighborhood service elements and things like that, how can we be complementary to what's happening at the village? So not where you're not taking away or redirecting things from it, but helps make that more attractive.
No, absolutely. So when you mentioned the Two Notch Road business piece, the Clemson Road industrial piece, the Pontiac downtown corridor, how did that come about in this particular plan?
So I guess in terms of those three different areas, is that your question, Mr. Gilchrist?
Yes, sir. I think it was on one of the slides. I'm sorry.
Okay, so looking at the three different business areas. So those are the primary commercial areas within the boundary areas. So you've got the Pontiac, quote unquote, downtown area or town center kind of thing. You've got the Richland Northeast Industrial Park, which is Clemson Road, and then you've got a limited amount of commercial business along Two Notch that kind of fronts Royal Pines Estates. And so those are kind of those three distinct commercial areas that exist within the boundary area. And so that Two Notch area that we're referencing, that would be portion that kind of fronts the village on the other side of the train tracks.
Okay. Any additional questions from the commission?
No, I got more of a comment. I understand kind of what Ms. Crooks was saying. The reason why I brought that up, because Village of Sandhills, a lot of empty spaces in there for commercial, a lot. And right across the street, you have that newer gas station, you got the fresh market, you got the pet company right there in that little area they were talking about. And then that's directly in front of that Royal Pines, along with Hobby Lobby. And then if you're looking towards the village to the right of that, you have the industrial area of F&N, and they have their facility there. And then of course, you have the interchange from Clemson and Two Notch. And I understand what we're trying to do, but I think, when we really look at it, what's really needed in there, I definitely see some green spaces and things needed for some of these communities. And I think we need to focus more along the lines of that than, more industrial or more commercial, because that's already zoned and those little areas already have things. Now, redoing those areas, that's something to look at. But mainly, I think it's just because the two main parcels right off that's owned by, I want to say it's Pioneer and Enigma, all that area. I think that would just be a great area to somehow tie in. Because, until we really know what Clemson's going to let us do, I think that kind of holds our hands on what we can do. If they don't let us do anything, then we might need to look at redoing it. If they do let us use some of that for some green space and for our members of the community, that could reshape the whole plan. If they don't, then that reshapes it in a different way. And I think that's kind of more along the lines of what I'm getting at with it. And I understand what you mean about the Sandhills, because yes, when I look at the Sandhills to me is Clemson over, but that little area around Pontiac, I see Spears Creek is the Pontiac area, and that was just to clear up any confusion with that. But I really would love to know what the Sandhill or what Clemson research would let us use.
Yeah, and just an additional question regarding the school district. Is the school district included as part of is the entire school district included as part of the plan, or is it just particular schools?
So I don't believe there's any schools included within this boundary area, Mr. Gilchrist. Maybe I'm not understanding your question necessarily.
Well, I guess that's my question. Are there, I mean, I
So
saw a reference in the.
Fall within school district 2, but I don't believe there's any schools within this boundary area, no, sir.
Okay, thank you. No, I just piggyback on what Dennis just raised, and that is, you know, as we think about this, you know, even with what we're doing with the rewrite, I mean, all of that, or the new land development code, I mean, all of that to me is consistent with what we're trying to do, more so than a piecemeal approach. You look around Richland County, it's clear that a lot of what we've done on the development side has just been, you know, just on you know, in a very piecemeal way, but that these plans, I think, serve as an opportunity to be more comprehensive in our approach to do some of this. I'm a little concerned that you mentioned that in 2015, council restricted its own ability to be more comprehensive in their ability to plan to develop these master plans. It's the first time I'd ever heard that. That certainly would have given this planning commission, I think, some better guidance about just how we think about these plans going forward. And so anyway, let me ask a final question on this, and then I'll, you know, we'll go whatever we got to go with. Are these plans able to be amended?
That is a good question, Mr. Chair. We have not amended any of these to date, but as it relates to, I guess, this plan, I guess any of the other plans, obviously they were adopted by county council. So I mean, I guess that it would be county council's prerogative if they wanted to. Similarly with this, you know, if council did decide they wanted to do another plan, you know, we would apply this criteria. They would have to, you know, move forward with such. But even, you know, with, I guess, amending this plan or any other plan, you know, that's their prerogative. So
okay,
it hasn't happened, but I think some of them it's yeah, it just depends. But it has not.
Thank you, Mr. Crooks. That's all I have. Anybody else want to comment on this?
Could I ask a question?
Sure, Mr. Young, go right ahead.
Hey, it's Mr. Branham.
Oh, it's Branham. I'm sorry, Branham.
Hey, no problem. So just for clarification's sake, I guess for my own purposes, to confirm, page 25 of the comprehensive plan, that's where I see the reference to these neighborhood plans, master plans, and these other master plans. It says the Richland County Comprehensive Plan incorporates by reference 9 adopted neighborhood plans developed for areas in Richland County's jurisdiction. And then it lists out the 9, I guess, that were in place as of 2015 when the plan was last revised. So this would be the 10th plan. Does that sound right, Mr. Crooks?
This would be the 11th. So when we adopted the Capital City Mill District Plan, it was a similar resolution that you're asking to vote on today, to amend and incorporate it into the comprehensive plan. So just because we haven't updated the language within the comprehensive plan itself, but we do have 10 adopted currently. This would be the
okay. All right, great. And I've heard talk around it, but I'm just also trying to confirm the mechanics of how these might come to be, these types of plans. So I know former Councilman Jackson was integral to, I guess, this one coming together. Was it the county staff? Was it county council? Who said, hey, let's look at doing a master plan in this area?
So that could actually happen in a variety of ways. So the way that the language is set up as part of that policy is that as we get a request from whomever that may be, so whether that is a citizen group, whether that is a commission, whether that is council, or even if it's something that staff initiates, we would apply that criteria. It gives us an evaluation ranking of green, yellow, or red. And based on those, it's really kind of your different recommendations. So green means go, red kind of means stop, hold up. Yellow is kind of an in-between. It's going to be favorable. It's not depending on circumstances. But we would apply that criteria based on whoever asked. And that's kind of, and then ultimately it would go before county council for them to make a determination on to say, all right, do we actually want to do this or do we not, based on that evaluation. So I guess to your point,
Okay.
Mr. Random, if it was a citizen group and they said, well, we want to just do this for this one little block area. Well, at that point, we have a different tool that we would likely utilize, and staff would just kind of work with them individually to say, all right, how could we kind of, work to create our own kind of smaller, limited neighborhood plan versus this larger policy document that is traditionally what our neighborhood master plans are.
It's deemed like green by the staff.
Mhm.
So
So green generally would be a positive, positive. So it has the most favorable criteria. So we would generally recommend approval.
and then the staff presents it to council and says, hey, would you like to proceed with the development of a master plan for this area?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. That's very insightful. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any additional comments from the commission? Is there any action that we need to take on this today, Ms. Crooks?
Yes, sir. We would be asking you to approve a resolution or vote on to approve a resolution to amend the comp plan and incorporate this in such. Looking for the specific language here. Yes, sir. So a resolution to recommend that Richland County Council enact an ordinance amending the 2015 Richland County Comprehensive Plan, putting the pieces in place by incorporating and adopting the Rediscover Sandhills Neighborhood Master Plan into the plan. And we can read that full resolution if you would like before voting.
Can we offer that with any amendments from this commission? Recommendations, I guess we should say.
I would defer to Mr. Price on that. I'm not sure generally how these have worked in the past.
Mr. Price?
I'm sorry, kind of thinking about that. I'm not sure, because I don't know if we've ever had one to come before the planning commission where it has been amended. I do, based on the previous conversation and kind of looking at the process in which we've gone through to adopt this, I would wonder if any changes to it wouldn't essentially be the same as us having to go back through the process again that we did to enact this.
Mr. Chair, this is Beverly Frierson.
Yes, Ms. Price.
What I was wondering is, could we defer action on this at this time only so that we could have an opportunity to check with county council to find out if they are open to our amending this document? Because as we heard in the discussion, certain parts have been left out. And so it's not that we don't want to honor the fact that the committee has worked on this, but I just think it might be appropriate to defer action until we have an opportunity to check with county council and see what the parameters would be if we try to make an amendment to this current document.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And Mr. Price, is that an option?
Mr. Chair? May I recognize?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
I guess in terms of what you're looking to potentially amend, if it would be the boundary area, then that would be something I would probably recommend against, because that has been something that we considered in the past based on the comments that we got. And so that was one of those things where, at least while Mr. Jackson was still with us, that was one of the things that he asked staff to look at as related to the planning area based on the comments we had received. And the recommendation for that was unfavorable. So it basically creates an entirely different evaluation that would need to take place, as well as this planning process would have affected as well. And so I guess from my point of view, I would recommend not making any amendments to this, especially if it was in relation to the boundary area itself.
Okay.
My
But could
comment,
we,
Mrs.
I guess,
President,
I guess
go ahead,
what Ms.
Chair.
Frierson was asking, I'm sorry, Ms. Frierson.
No, you go
I-
ahead,
I
Chairman.
think what Commissioner Frierson was asking is, can we defer this to ask them additional questions about it? Is that possible?
I
That's
guess,
what I was asking.
I mean, I guess so. I just, I guess I would just wonder,
Are we under a timeline, Mr. Crooks, on this?
not necessarily, but I guess the expectation was it would go before county council at their next zoning public hearing this month. But I guess if you had questions in the meantime, I could look to address those as well, just not to delay this process any further. But I guess if the commission move to defer, I mean, that is the will of the commission.
Well, I think one of the things that might, if council was expecting this at their next meeting, that it may be more appropriate to at least highlight the fact that the commission did have some questions about the boundaries, and more specifically, some of the areas that some of the concerns you've heard here today. I think as a footnote that might be able to, is that possible to be included? Just as notes from you as you talk to council about the plan?
Yeah, yes, sir. I think that is definitely possible.
Also, this is Firestone again. If council is expecting some type of action on our part by their meeting this month, I don't see any problem with our chairperson, Mr. Gilchrist, being empowered to go ahead and have conversation with the chair of the county council prior to that meeting, just to find out answer to the question that I raised and that Mr. Gilchrist presented, especially in light of the fact that you said it's not really a time crunch issue. It's just that we need some clarification. And if we do have to open the process again to include parts of what we call the Sandhill area in the document, so be it. But it's just a matter of giving our chairperson the opportunity to make inquiry. And I don't think it would affect the timelines presented before us.
Mr. Gilchrist?
Yes, sir, Ms. Dennis.
You know, we've had a lot of questions. We brought up a lot of things. And the reason why I'm so hesitant with all this is, you know, I know you attended a week or two ago.
Yes, sir, I did.
And, you know, they talked about community solar gardens, road connections, branding, signage, a lot of stuff that's in here that I think we need to look more in depth with. I mean, you know, adopting a resolution, what we talked about today, I think we left a lot out when it comes to, I mean, there was 207 slides that we went over the other day. And there's a lot of, and that whole thing has a lot of stuff about the village of Sandhills in it too. And that's why I'm kind of like, well, does it really, I mean, what are we really doing? I mean, if we're really talking about that one document that we went over the other week, it's not consistent with what we're trying to do with this resolution because it's two separate areas.
So, Mr. Dennis, to your point, the presentation that I gave was maybe verbally not the same, but it is the same presentation from the other night. And in terms of the interventions that are included within the document has been the interventions that have gone through. They've been vetted by the public. They've been looked at by staff, as well as the original interventions, some of which you mentioned just then, in the initial analysis as being potential opportunities to explore. Those were vetted throughout this process, some of which are not feasible, some of which are not, I guess, doable or warranted. And so that's why they are not included as specific recommendations now. So that is one of the things that is noted within the plan, is what the prior interventions were and what those ultimate outcomes happened to be, whether they were included in some other way, whether or not they were not because of X, Y, or Z. But all of the interventions that are in here have been vetted through this process, as well as how the village should or shouldn't be included within this is another item that has been part of this entire process. And ultimately, it was deemed that it should not be for various reasons.
Yeah. Well, this is Stephen Gilchrist again. I know the village has been a topic of discussion, but for me, what's a greater concern is as we see the growth in that area taking place, and we really take a subset of what we're looking at on the planning side, it just seems to me that it's a little disconnected from what is actually happening in a more comprehensive way. And I think I heard you say earlier that one of the reasons some of that may be is because council restricted its own ability to make the plans more comprehensive. If that's the case, I don't know if council, I'm sure some of the members may know that, but some may not. That may be worth explaining in a more detailed manner to council, just so that we're all clear about where we're going.
So, Mr. Gilchrist, if I could maybe add a little bit more clarity to that. So,
Sure.
As it relates to this criteria, there was no criteria previously. It was, what is the area? How big do we want it to be? How small do we want it to be? And that was that. There was no criteria previously for how we looked at these things. So you have master plans that are the area of the Candlewood subdivision, or you have master plans that are a third of the county, Lower Richland. So there is not any rhyme or reason as to how or why these plan boundary areas were created. So what these criteria do is establishes that mechanism where you can be targeted with how we are leveraging these resources. So you're not spreading everything out too thin, or you have too many issues or not enough issues. So
no, I get it.
Trying to get to that Goldilocks situation, that's what that criteria does. It still allows you to look at things in a comprehensive manner. It's just makes you be much more targeted and specific into how you are doing it.
Sorry. Technology fell down. Sorry. But no, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Mr. Crooks. Any additional comments for the staff? Thank you for a very healthy conversation. So I guess we need to take a vote on this. We do need to take a vote on this. Is that right, Mr. Price?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the chair will entertain any motion on what we want to do with this going forward. Please let's not all speak at once.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think before you vote, I want to have and I know we've kind of beat this to death to a degree, but
yeah,
I want to make sure we have a good understanding of what it is that the Planning Commission is looking to vote on.
Okay.
So now clearly we can see that you can vote to approve or recommend the resolution that's before you, as is. But it also seems like you also are looking at potentially making changes to the overall master plan that's part of this resolution. Am I correct?
Well, I think there obviously are some questions about it, and I think there, Commissioner Frias and Commissioner Dennis also indicated, just get a little more clarity on it. So that would be helpful. And if that's not possible, given that there is a time crunch, then maybe some of these concerns that have been raised can be highlighted to council as you're presenting whatever you need to present to them, depending upon how we vote on this today. So I think Commissioner Frierson was suggesting that is it possible for us to defer this until some of those questions can potentially get some clarity on them? And is that a possibility?
Mr. Chair, I'm willing to make a motion to that effect.
Okay. Is that a possibility, Mr. Price?
We're looking at it now.
Okay.
I think, Mr. Chair, at least from my perspective, I think I would request that y'all make a motion on the resolution as presented and then provide me with what those questions or specific comments you'll have related to this. And I will make sure that those get addressed to council when we are discussing this plan.
Okay, is Mr. Price still checking on the possibility?
No, we're still working together on this, and I agree with the recommendation made by Mr. Crooks.
Okay. So do we have a motion on the floor for deferment, Commissioner Frierson? Is that a motion?
I make a motion that we defer action on this plan until we can have our chairperson converse with county council as to our concerns.
Is there a second on that motion? Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second, then that we will defer action on the resolution to recommend to county council the adopting the Rediscover Sandhills master plan until such time as there are several items that the commission would just like a little bit more clarity on. Any discussion? If not, Chair,
Mr. Chair, I think before you go forward, so we're talking about you. I'm going by Mrs. Frierson's her motion that you as the chair will go. You will represent the planning commission to county council to discuss this, and then based on whatever comes about from that meeting, you would then bring that back to the planning commission. As such, y'all would then make your recommendations based on that.
Well, I mean, certainly that can I don't mind doing that, but I also think that staff has probably taken very good notes from this conversation and can share that on behalf of the commission. Is that possible? Would that require us to have to take a subsequent motion on that?
Based on the motion that was made by Ms. Frierson, I would say yes, sir.
Okay. Well, then, Ms. Frierson, can you restate your motion to include the discussion that commissioners had today regarding the comprehensive plan and the questions being raised to get some clarity from council on those questions? And if I need to be engaged, then I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, and again, I think before Ms. Frierson even makes her motion, again, I just think so that we're all on the same page, making sure that what we're doing is clear as we go. If staff is to present this to council, I would ask, and I know might seem a bit tedious in this request, but I would ask that the planning commission members state specifically what questions or ideas they want us to bring forward to the to county council, because at this point there was a lot of discussion made, a lot of questions made, but we would like to get to the specifics, or as a staff we would have to go back and centrally listen to this meeting again and pick pieces of what we think that you were asking of staff.
Mr. Price, this is Stephen Gilchrist. What I would suggest is, yes, there was a lot of discussion on a lot of great points, and it might be more prudent than to go back through all of that at the meeting here today. If you guys could take a moment to listen to this portion of the minutes, because some of the comments were pretty consistent, and I think it will help to synthesize some of the questions that I think we might want to ask council.
Okay, do you want us to afterwards, once we compile those questions, do you want us to send this out to the planning commission members to make sure that we've hit on all of them?
I think that would be great, yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is Frierson, do you want me to amend my motion to include that there is an option that either our chairperson, Mr. Gilchrist, can present our concerns, or that the gentleman that presented the information today and who took notes could present our concerns in that format? Do you want an option?
That's correct, Ms. Fryer.
Okay, so you want me to restate it now?
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. I make a motion that we defer action on the Sandhills adoption at this time until one of two things can happen. Either our chairperson, Mr. Gilchrist, can go before county council on our behalf and present our concerns, or that the representative that we heard today, and I apologize, I don't know your name, I think Mr. Brooks, Mr. Crooks, can present our concerns, and they will be delineated specifically after, as Mr. Geo stated, Mr. Price stated, after we go back through the minutes and pick out the specifics, which are not before us at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Price. And is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay. If not, the chair will entertain a roll call vote.
Okay, Gilchrist,
Aye.
Carnes. Okay, we've lost Commissioner Carnes. Yankee,
Aye.
Carlisle,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
Grady,
Aye.
Taylor,
Aye.
Branham,
Aye.
Frierson.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
The motion.
All right.
That motion
That motion
passes.
carries.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Price. And thank the staff again for the great work that you've done on this project. It's a very important document, and we certainly look forward to continuing to work with the staff on this. Moving on to item 5, the chairman's report. Just a couple of things that I wanted to place on the commission's radar screen. If staff wants to weigh in on this, you certainly can. There was a news article dated April 26th in the state newspaper from Representative South Carolina House Representative Jermaine Johnson, who called for a halt on new development and rezoning in Richland County. And I'm sure some of you may have seen that piece. And so I wanted to bring that to the commission's attention. I spoke with Mr. Price, and certainly Mr. Price can share whatever thoughts he may have on that. But it is certainly, anytime that there's a conversation about halting rezoning in the county, we need to pay attention to that and at least be aware of those conversations taking place. The second thing, along those same lines, we have all been noticing what's been happening in our neighboring county in Lexington County, where they have placed a moratorium on development. And, obviously we're watching that very closely and monitoring that to see, what will be the outcome of some of that. But I just share that both of those items as points of information to the commission that, as we continue to think through just the conversation we just had in a very detailed manner, that these things are very important to make sure that we're giving the necessary attention to them because of some of the other dynamics that are happening around us. So I just wanted to share that with the commission. Mr. Price, do you want to comment on any of those, or we just use it as information? We lost Mr. Price.
I believe he had stepped away, Mr. Chairman, for a second. He should be coming back around to.
Oh, okay. Well, and again, I just wanted to mention those two things as part of the chairman's report. We can go on to number 6, and we can come back to the chairman's report if that's okay. Regarding, and if Mr. Price wants to weigh in on those other 2 items. Land development code, is there an update on that?
Yes, sir. So there should be a press release going out this afternoon, I believe, related to the code rewrite. And so I guess the big piece of information is that the public hearing draft is now open and available for review. And so that is up on the project website, so weplantogether.org. So the draft code is there in its entirety. And so this includes revisions and modifications from the consolidated draft based on feedback and comments that had been submitted and received since about March of 2020 up through December of 2020. So that includes when the initial consolidated draft release was through the testing period. So significant amount of time. And so we are now at that point where we have this, I guess, kind of a final draft, if you will, that is getting ready to be voted on. And so we sent that out to the commissioners. So all of you should have that digital copy of it. And so another thing that we sent out as well was trying to get on your calendar a work session to go over the code, have some discussion, have some comments, and we had a few different dates on there that we wanted to get the thoughts of the commissioners on, so that way you had those, check your calendars and the like, so we could make some determinations at the meeting today for when you all might want to have that.
Okay. So let's take the last point first. Can we all pull out our calendars and see? So Mr. Crooks, from a timeline perspective, we need to do this in the next couple of weeks, next week.
So we, at the moment, the plan is to bring this back before you all at your June the 7th meeting.
Okay. So we need to have a work session before then.
Correct. Yes, sir. And so the dates that we had proposed were the, let me find them, had proposed the 12th, 17th, 19th, and 24th. All times beginning at either 3, 4, or 5 p.m. And we'd be looking at probably at least a 2-hour meeting, if not longer. And so one thing I do want to note is the potential for needing 2 of these based on the level of input and discussion that commissioners have and the level of comments that you all have as well.
Can we look at the 17th possibly, commissioners? To give everybody
I'm perfectly fine with the 17th. There's just no way for me to do it on the 12th. I will be out of town on a business meeting. That's the only day that I do have concern.
Yes, sir, Commissioner Dennis. Everybody else? Anybody else? Can we?
What's that time?
Have problems with the 17th?
What's the time on the 17th?
You want to do 3 o'clock? Can we do 3 o'clock? Same time our commission meeting? All right,
I think we
then
all,
let's plan.
this is Commissioner Taylor. I think we all got that email. I can't remember. There was a response from Ms. Carnes. I can't remember which date.
She said that she was unavailable. She said, at this point, I can do any of the dates except the times on the 19th. So
Okay.
the 19th, at least with those times, were the only one that was unfavorable for her.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
I wasn't
great.
sure what date it was, but if the 17th works, that's fine with me.
Fantastic. Then we'll settle it 17th at 3 o'clock, Mr. Brooks.
Okay. All right.
And will you guys send out a reminder so that everybody can get this on their calendars?
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay.
And this is for the code rewrite, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
If I put the wrong thing in my calendar, I will be studying for the wrong thing.
Yes, sir. So
Understood.
this is going to be for the land development code text. So that is out and available, and as that email should have had a copy of that also. So we would ask that you all begin reading through that, reviewing that, and making note of any comments or questions that you all have in relation to it.
And you said there's a press release going out this afternoon?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm checking my emails now, but I believe so. If it's not going out today, then it should be going out sometime tomorrow, most likely.
Okay. All right, Ms. Crooks, is that all that we need to do on the land development code?
Pretty much. We just needed to get y'all scheduled for a work session. And so that way you guys can be looking through it and be getting prepared for that.
Okay, well, 3 o'clock on the 17th. Same bat time, same bat channel. All right. Has Mr. Price returned?
Yes, I'm back, sir.
Mr. Price, I don't know if you heard me mention in the chairman's report, those two items regarding the moratorium in Lexington and the statement from the representative regarding the halting of rezoning in Richland County. I just mentioned those two pieces of information as information to this commission, obviously given the fact that both of those, that information speaks to issues relative to zoning and development. So I just didn't, I wanted to see if you had any comments on anything, updates on any of the information.
At this time, I'm not aware of any action that county council is looking at because there hasn't been any action taken in response to the statements made by Representative Johnson, or looking at some of the actions that have been taken by Lexington County. County council is scheduled to meet, so I will of course keep my eyes on that meeting and any discussion that comes about from that regarding any proposed moratorium, or if there are any questions that need to be asked by staff. And then I will immediately report those to the planning commission so you'll know where we are going forward.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Moving on to item 7, planning director's report.
There was, unfortunately, this is normally where we provide you with what happened at the past county council zoning public hearing meeting. Unfortunately, due to an error regarding the advertisement of that meeting had to be canceled. And so all of those items and the items from this particular agenda will be taken up by county council on the 25th of May.
Okay. Noted. All right, is there anything else to claim the attention of the commission? If not, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Third.
All right, very good. Thank y'all. We are adjourned, and I look forward to seeing you guys next month.
All right.
No,
so
I
we
look
got
forward to seeing you on the
on the
17th.
17th.
17th. Yes, 17th.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
All right.
All right, guys. All right, bye.
bye.